West, and we're doing a breaking news edition of Thinking Critical YouTube. I'm here live with Dok and Perch. How are you guys doing today?
I'm wonderful.
Doing great. Yeah, it's a good day.
So did you guys hear anything interesting?
Nothing. No, it's quiet. I don't know, Doc. Anything for you?
Nothing happened today. It was just a weird day. Nothing happened at all.
Very quiet. Yeah.
So we got news this, well, for me, it was very early this morning. For you guys, it would have been this afternoon. Kevin Feige now has creative direction or creative control over all of Marvel. That includes Marvel Television and Marvel Comics, as well as his Marvel Studios job as well. Perch, you said that maybe you'd heard rumblings of this in the past. Could we have seen this coming?
Yeah, I mean, about 4 months ago or so, there was talk that a move like this was going to happen because we were coming off of Endgame, and there was this idea of consolidating prior to moving into Phase 4. And Feige had definitely made his case earlier to be split from Marvel, but then kind of proved that he could get things going. So there was a move that had been anticipated, but then everything just kind of quieted down and people went about their ways. There were rumors about Feige producing Star Wars and kind of helping maybe that brand out a bit with its next generation. So people had heard about it, but then landing today was, I think, took a ton of people completely off guard and throughout the industry, including movie and TV.
Yeah, it seemed like it felt like it was out of left field. I know, Doc, you're possibly the biggest skeptic on the panel right now. What was your initial reaction to this news?
Cautious optimism, and oddly enough, and now I'm still very cautious on it because there's a number of ways this can go, and some are good, and some are pretty much the end of comics as we know it. So, at this point, that's the one cool thing. Everything's on the table. So we can start speculating, but it can be either fire and brimstone or, horns sung by angels or whatever. I don't know. And it's awesome.
I line up with you completely. I think you took the words right out of my mouth. That's the exact same way I feel right now.
All right. So neither of you are saying this is the ultimate demise of comics. There's no way they wouldn't make this change if they weren't just going to kill the entire comic line altogether.
No, I would say definitely not. And I think you can look to the past for a lot of these things. I mean, Feige has made comments many times before about about why he likes comics. He likes comics because it's a good trial balloon to get ideas out into the market at a cheaper cost. And that works for them.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've definitely noticed, and I'm certain Marvel Studios has noticed, is that the comic buying and reading audience have a very good eye for good quality storytelling and what will work and resonate with people. So I think this is an interesting thing, or an interesting change. Doc, so I'm assuming that this has been put in place because they want Marvel Studios to start driving the direction of all Marvel properties going forward. Is that how you took this information?
That was my kind of impression too. Now, does that mean that the movies start syncing up more with the comics, or does that mean that the comics start syncing up more with the movies? And or do they keep it completely separate? I don't know. And I can see them there's pros and cons of all three of those options. And it's going to be interesting one way or the other. Now, if it starts syncing up more with the movies, then what does that mean? But if the movie starts syncing up more with the comics, that becomes a little more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm quite certain it's going to be the latter. Is that your impression, Perch?
Yeah, well, I think it meets a little bit in the middle. I mean, you look at, for example, people have said, and I've gotten a number of comments since the story broke about, oh, this is horrible. Now the comics are going to become like the movies. And I just would ask everybody, take a look at the current Avengers book. Would you rather have it look like the movies, or would you rather have it look like the current Avengers book? If you're a comic fan, it's a tough question, I think, for a lot of people. I'm not saying this is all good news. I think that, like Doc said, I think there's a number of negative ways this could go, but just being pragmatic about it, they can put out 3, maybe 4 movies a year out of their studio. They may do more, and there was, of course, Disney Plus shows and other things. Comics are coming out every month. There's a lot more of them in terms of volume. They're a lot cheaper to produce than movies, so it's a great way to get some characters out, see what's exposed, see what makes sense, and then have them feed back and forth between the movies. I don't think you're going to see this sudden giant whitewash of comics to be completely movie-like. I think that you'll see the two play together.
I hope to God. I hope that that's the way it works out. Now, the one thing. Oh, hey, Skip, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. How y'all doing?
All right, all right. But the one thing that I do expect to see happen in the not too distant future is a very similar move to what DC did a few years ago and now this does kind of suck. I do expect to see Marvel out of New York City.
Yeah, I would expect so.
They'll be in LA, and that's just going to be how it's going to be. Now it might be 2 years from now, but I have a sneaking suspicion that he's going to want to have that Kevin is going to want to have the creative and the editorial side essentially down the hall from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet. I mean, if you look at Disney in general, and I think the best way to predict the future is to look to the past, look what Disney does, look at their Imagineering department, look at how Parks and Resorts operates, all the different studios and parts of their business. They like consolidation. They often let small arms of the business run independent for a time, and then they pull them back in. They really like brand consistency. Disney is rabid about brand consistency, and it really irks them when they have different kind of versions of a character, whether it's the theme park characters or now we see with Marvel. It makes sense to have them bring into the fold and bring some control. With that, and people could take this as good news or bad news, depending on who you like, there's also going to be a purging of some middle management. They've got a lot of management in that company, and frankly, with consolidation, that's part of the nature of that game. You get less of it.
Yeah.
So, Perch, it appears that the first victim might be Joe Quesada. He still has a role with the company, but he's no longer the chief creative officer, and he seems to have had a downgrade in job title. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's going to be positioned as a natural thing. It's going to be positioned as not a demotion and a valuable part of the company, everything else. But going from an officer, a C-level, C-suite executive to a VP, even if it's an EVP, that is a downgrade no matter how you look at it. Now, lots of people will tell us over the next couple of weeks why it's not. But as Doc pointed out, 40 on the air, that's the same title as a bunch of other people at Marvel, including Salman Amanat and David Gabriel, and a bunch of other people have the same basic executive status. If you're a Disney employee and even indirectly, and you're part of the C-suite, you get a lot of benefits. And that's, I'm sure some agreement's going to be reached that he's not going to lose all of them. And I don't think it's a, tarred feather down the hallway, but it's not good news, no matter how you want to pretty it up.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I want to welcome Skipntosh. Welcome to the broadcast, my friend. Emergency breaking news broadcast. What are your initial thoughts on Kevin Feige taking over as the creative director of all of Marvel?
I'm pretty excited about it. I'm a natural skeptic, so of course I thought about and I heard some of the comments of why this might not be a good thing. But Perch kind of hit one of the nails on the head. If you want to see where someone is going, take a look back at their past. Kevin Feige has an incredible track record. Definitely not a perfect one by any means, but definitely one that's solid, that's consistent, and that one that isn't marred by a whole heck of a lot of controversy. A few things here and there that got resolved, fairly reasonably and amicably in a way that everybody feels good about it and everybody looks forward to the next thing that he's got his hands in. So my initial reactions is excitement from a corporate standpoint. Again, like Perch said, it being Disney, it makes sense. and I see really nothing but success coming from it. And if I see anything other than that, I will be very, very surprised.
Now, my one big concern though is this is the first time. I mean, look, I understand Kevin's a creative guy, and he's been a creative guy in film, in I think he did a little bit of television before he got into to film. He's a lifelong comic fan, but he's still not a comics person. And I fear that this may be a little bit of a, bringing in the guy that used to run Pepsi to run Apple because, well, they're both companies. And I concern myself with that, but he's already a step a little bit closer because he is a creative guy, but he's still not a comics guy. And this is the first time I can ever remember Marvel not being run by a comics guy.
Well, the devil's advocate on that is, people have been complaining for years about the way Marvel is being run and how it's bad for the industry. Maybe Marvel has actually seen the tea leaves as well and agree, and they decided it's time for a new direction, a new change. Distribution is archaic right now. Marketing is, quite frankly, embarrassing. Perch, do you think that Feige will put a new emphasis on those things, or do you think he's strictly going to be in charge of creative?
I think he'll pull things together. And somebody made a comment on one of the video I did post on this of just, I doubt if Feige's going to suddenly be sitting at a boardroom table and making day-to-day decisions on comics. That's not what he's going to do. Make no mistake about it. But I think there will be, as I mentioned before, consolidation and a lot of efforts to tap more into the Disney mechanism, take advantage of their infrastructure for how they publish, for their marketing. Disney has a bunch of tools that Marvel, for a number of reasons, a lot political, ignored. And they did their own thing, often poorly, or they allowed themselves to stay in that relationship with Diamond, which Disney, being who Disney is, can go in and strong arm in some cases. So there's reasons why this change is probably helpful from an infrastructure perspective. I definitely agree with Doc, though. I don't want to be I'm portrayed sometimes on your show being Mr. Optimism. There are ways this could go wrong, for sure. And it is kind of sad in a way that there is a guy who's not necessarily grown up with comics running the show. But to your point, Wes, we've been seeing that for a while now, and that has not worked. So change may be good here.
Well, yeah, the only my one concern is comics and movies and television are very different mediums. Comics are only limited by your own imagination. So if you have a television or a film person doing the creative direction, maybe he scales down on what could be some epic stories. We're all excited about what we think is going to be an upcoming Avengers versus X-Men or Illuminati versus X-Men type story arc. And I don't want a television guy to be overseeing the creative direction of that, because he might scale down what could be, one of the largest scaled stories possible. Do you think that's a legitimate concern?
Can be. I think, he did. So what's interesting is if you go back to about 2015, I think, when the Marvel Creative Committee was butting heads with Feige a lot, one of the big areas they were butting heads with was kind of the exact inverse of what you'd think. It was that the creative committee was getting into the weeds of, we should show them walking down the street and we should show decompressed storytelling. This was definitely a Bendis Quesada kind of push. And Feige was a big proponent of, no, we got to go big and we got to go epic, and it should blow people. This is the first time seeing their characters they've been wanting to see for years doing big things. Let's have them do big things. So it's exactly the opposite of what you think. But that rift that happened with the original creative committee that kind of kicked all this into motion, I think informs a little bit about where Feige's head's at.
Mm-hmm. Now, in fairness, remember though, Jeff Loeb is the guy that's been running in television for a long time, and he is a comics guy.
That's true.
He's a comics guy and a TV guy. He was a TV guy that became a comics guy that became a TV guy that became a comics guy that became a TV guy again.
And I think he just got elevated. It's the other part of the story people aren't necessarily hooking off of, but in a kind of an odd way, he has a much clearer path to success than he did 24 hours ago now.
Oh, yeah.
And for those people who've been saying, it's a shame that the Netflix stuff and some of these other things were done off in a distance. I mean, the Netflix contract, that business relationship is always going to be problematic. But there's a little bit more glimmer of hope that a lot of what Jeff Loeb pioneered will be brought into the MCU proper now that they're working closely together.
Well, yeah, that's the other nice thing, that Jeff and Kevin apparently have a pretty decent working relationship. It was the problem that Kevin and Ike didn't.
Right.
And Jeff still reported to Ike, so he couldn't go and just talk to Kevin about things. Now he can.
That's right. And Ike, I mean, remember, for those of you who, we're throwing a lot of names here around, but Ike's chairman, of course, and chairman it's more than just a figurehead role, because he definitely has some day-to-day things that he does. But under Ike's kind of leadership and his style, it led to a lot of kind of silly shenanigans that would go on where people under his leadership use that cover to basically run parts of Marvel like a boutique business. And now there's a direct path to Feige, which should help cut some of that out. I think the days actually of Marvel, whether it's good or bad, the days of it running like a boutique or a vanity project, I think are coming to an end.
So yeah, the restructure is pretty interesting. So Kevin Feige isn't in charge of everything. Ike Perlmutter still has his role in everything, but all creative personnel, whether it be movies, television, and comic books, all directly report to Kevin Feige now, correct?
That's right. And Ike's basic part of the world is really in more of a classic traditional chairman role, where he'll oversee kind of existing businesses that have long-term contracts, businesses that are more operational, which you think of as a kind of a classic COO type role in the company. But as a chairman, he's basically going to keep these contracts until their end of life. And the creative generation of ideas, kind of where they're going to spend their money, how they're going to put some of these bets forward, and how they're going to leverage more parts of Disney, falls under Feige. And that's definitely where the life is.
All right, Skip. So in a best case scenario, we can't hear you, Skip. Is your mic on?
Ike's going to make sure that the toy money and that the merchandise money keeps coming in. That's what Ike's going to do. That's his background. That's what he's going to continue to make sure comes through. And then, yeah, all the creative stuff, obviously Feige will take care of it. But Ike, remember though, y'all, at the same time, Ike's 76 years old. I'm going to put that out there, and I'll leave that at that.
So Skip, in an ideal situation, if in 24 months we come back to this and we say, how did Kevin Feige do? If he did well, what do you think he will have done with Marvel Comics?
Kind of, again, back to what Perch said. He's gonna infuse it with that Disney sense of consistency and quality. And there's still going to be pandering to some agendas here and there. It's kind of the nature of the beast. But I don't believe he's going to put that in front of quality and consistency, because that's kind of what makes the mouse, the juggernaut that it is. So that's what I believe he'll do. And let us not forget his relationship with Jeff Johns, which is a very, very long relationship, and they're still on good terms. I wouldn't be surprised if he did have any creative ideas he needed to bounce or whatnot. That's a person that he can tap to bounce ideas off of. And obviously we know Jeff Johns, his track record with continuity and appreciating things of the past and the quality and the essence of the character. So I don't know. It's hard. I don't want to sit up here I don't think there's anything wrong with being Mr. Optimistic. I think it's fine to wish that things go well, and I think it's realistic to know that things can't, but it's really, really hard for me to poke holes in why Kevin Feige won't be successful with this. Even though he's not a comic book guy, he's a guy of quality, and he wants to make sure that everything along his chain is healthy. So I think he's going to make decisions that make sure that comics are healthy. And if comics are healthy, then hopefully everything under comics, like local comic book shops and all that other stuff, will be healthy as well.
All right, Doc. So if in 24 months you look back at this as a lifetime Marvel fan, what is your greatest hope to get out of this? What are the changes that you think that Kevin Feige can actually implement that will make Marvel Comics even better?
I think you'll see a little bit more of the meritocracy returning to creative positions, especially with who they attempt to bring in. People that sell rather than people that have the right connections. And now that is, I mean, if Brian Hill's to believe from his conversation with Perch about how it was easier for him to get meetings in Hollywood for screenplays than it was for him to get meetings about comics, then, hey, at least then, you have a guy that's more interested in getting interesting stories in front of him than who they know. But the other thing would be, now the mouse does have a tendency of liking to have consistency to their brands. So maybe we will finally see an end to all of the Marvel brand dilution of their major characters by making 73 versions of them, which I want to be over. Let's just throw all of the fake Wolverines, all the fake Hulks, all the fake Spider people into the sun and then pretend they never existed. Maybe you'll get that because, the mouse is going to want a unique, iconic look and distinct to each of their characters. So having 33 different variations of them might be going the wayside.
All right, Perch. We do have one question in the comments before I get to you. I want to ask you this: does this mean all the storylines are canceled and replaced with new ones?
Oh no, nothing's going to get canceled. They're not going to come in and burn house like that. You're going to see evolutionary change, and I think the first thing you will see is something that we as readers won't see, and that's they're going to clean up redundancy in middle management. You will see that kind of those shifts. And then you're going to see some I think outreach, which again I don't think the normal person's going to see, but you're going to see some outreach to utilize Disney publishing, something Disney's desperately wanted to do that Marvel's kind of ignored or put off to some extent, or very lightly tread into it. So storylines I think are going to stay as they are. I think what you'll see is if you could step back and look like a 2-year picture from now, I think you will see, like kind of what Doc said, what Skip said, you'll see a lot more consistency in the brand. You're going to see characters start to align. You're not going to see kind of random visions. And I think that's at least you're not going to see storylines go away.
Awesome. Well, to follow up on that, if in 24 months, Kevin Feige has done a great job, has done wonderful work, what will it mean to you as a retailer, and what do you think he would have done by then to really improve the comic industry?
Well, I think 3 things. I think first, 25% less comics. Honestly, you just trim the line and take the money you're spending there and put it into retaining and keeping better creative talent on the titles you are publishing. Go all in on really strong titles. So that would be the biggest probably one. The second is get people who know how to tell good stories and are not there for just kind of nepotism, hanging around reasons. Get rid of the old Bendis network that still exists there to some extent, and bring in the Hickmans and bring back Reminder and give Claremont a job writing something, and just all these people that are good talents that have kind of been on the shelf or politically been kind of put aside. Get those people to work making the stories that are going to transform into billion-dollar movies tomorrow. And then I think the last one is just, you hit upon earlier, marketing. Put some good marketing in place. Like I posted up yesterday, you open up My Hero Academia, the DVD, and you've got a card in every DVD sleeve saying, did you like the movie? Go buy the manga. Here's where you can go buy it. I mean, start utilizing that Disney engine to promote the comics and make more money. So those 3 things I think would be great for the company, great for fans, and that's what I'd like.
Maybe we'll see less cooking shows on their YouTube channel and more actual talking about their comics.
Mm-hmm. Feige has made comments before about how much he resents silly wastes of money for media that is that just doesn't matter. He does not like it. And so again, nobody should wake up and assume next week or the axe is going to fall for all the people that we don't like. That's not going to happen. But I do think you'll just see, if you take a 2-year view, you're going to see a trimming of all that nonsense.
Mm-hmm. All right. Before we wrap this up, let's take a little bit different view. Perch, if in 24 months this is all fallen apart and the comics division is at its worst level, what will have Kevin Feige done, and what kind of changes will he have implemented that have actually made things worse?
I mean, the comics are all bad clones of the movies. I think if you look at the comics that are movie adaptions that come off as soulless, kind of very poor versions. Imagine all the comics are like that. That's one nightmare scenario. The other would be just, he indicates he has little interest at all and he just licensed out all the properties. The odds of that happening are close to zero because, as we said, Disney likes consolidation. They're not going to farm out their brand to others. But those two scenarios would be pretty terrible, I think.
Although at the same time, Disney also has no interest in being a publisher.
Well,
Yeah.
they have a
Really have.
publishing arm, don't they?
Yeah, Disney has a really robust publishing arm that they would like to use, and they made several overtures to Marvel to use them, and Marvel just drug their feet consistently.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's something we'll actually see. All right, back to you, Skip. If in 2 years this is all falling apart and your faith in Kevin Feige has not been rewarded, what do you think will be the state of comics, and how do you think he will have dropped the ball?
I agree with a little bit of what Perch said. Just them trying to model the comics too much after the movie and kind of getting the priorities mixed up. Obviously, the movies are the big money makers, but the comics have to maintain their identity in the way that they do in order to inspire the things that get adapted. So I would say that. Gosh, I can't think really of anything else, but if that, because, and again, like Perch said, every time there was ever like one of the comics like, oh hey, this is a prequel to the movies, they were almost always garbage. They would just get like, oh hey, you're cleaning out the closet over there, come write this book. It's like, who are these people that you guys are getting to do that? So I think that would be my my only fear, but other than that, I have really no concerns.
All right, Doc, you are definitely the most skeptical among us. I know you have many more concerns, but we can't list them all. But in your mind, what is the worst case scenario in all of this in the next 24 months?
There's two that are really close to each other. One is similar to what Perch said, where I think but a little different, where they try to connect it too much into being one universe. The same way that they've done Star Wars, where they're claiming that anything in the Star Wars comics are canon. It really hampers creativity. You know where the beginning and end of every story is. It takes out a lot of the stakes. That a lot of the you become very creatively constrained, and additionally, if it's reflecting what's going on in the movie, then, okay, Robert Downey Jr.'s gone. So the only comics that you're going to have with him would be then prequel comics, stuff set in the past. But the other big concern would be if he basically still takes a hands-off approach and says, you guys do your thing. You report to me, but I'm going to just leave you guys to run the comics division. You guys know comics. I don't. I do. This is just a corporate restructuring. And he doesn't really change anything at all.
Interesting. I didn't think that one of your nightmare scenarios was not that it wouldn't be legitimate change. So I kind of like that, Doc. There's like a glass half empty, half full there going.
Yeah.
But
it too much or not enough. Yeah.
All right. So I think the temperature of the entire panel is cautious optimism. We're all waiting to see exactly what's going to happen, but there are many ways this could go great. There are definitely a couple ways this could go very bad. But I want to thank everyone for joining us here live today for this emergency broadcast with Kevin Feige as the new creative director over all of Marvel, including Marvel Studios, Marvel Television, and Marvel Comics. Doc, before we head out, where can people find you, my friend?
You can find me on Twitter at ScienceJesus, mostly yelling about the X-Men.
Awesome. Skip, where can people find you, my friend?
Well, find me on Thinking Critical, of course, but you can also find me at twitch.tv/Skipntosh. There's only one I, and it's in Skip.
Thank you very much. And Comics Perch, where can people find you if they want to get the latest news? All right. Maybe we lost.
Check me out on YouTube. Sorry, on mute. My fault. Check me out on YouTube, Comic Perch. Look forward to seeing you.
All right. And before we go, I want to say thank you very much to Nola Nerd, $5 super chat. and Kevin Feige I trust to start to drain the Marvel leadership swamp, we might finally find out what Sana Amanat's job is and does. I don't know about that, but it would be a good start. Thank you very much, Nola Nerd, for the super chat and for supporting the channel. Also, if you would like to support the channel, I now have a coffee site. The information will be in the description below. And thank you all very much for joining us. Salamat po, and we're out.
All right.